When we think about a sealed vault or like a locked safe, the whole concept really revolves around keeping the outside world completely shut out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
A perfect closed system.
Exactly. You lock the heavy steel door, and whatever happens to be inside is just, well, left entirely to its own devices. It's this completely self-contained universe.
Nothing gets in, nothing gets out,
Yeah.
and no new information can possibly be introduced.
And usually, that is exactly where the story ends. The safe just sits there in the dark. But then you look at nature,
Oh, yeah.
specifically at something as mundane and ordinary as an egg, and suddenly that locked vault isn't just sitting there inert, it's actively building something incredibly complex in the absolute dark.
It really is wild when you stop to think about it.
Right. So today, we're taking a deep dive into this short, completely bizarre translated essay titled "The Chick Hatches from Its Eggshell."
Yeah, it's quite the read.
It really is. And we are going to follow its rapid spiral from what seems like a simple farmyard observation into this massive, sweeping theological argument about, well, the very origins of knowledge itself.
It is a remarkable piece of writing, mostly just because of how it traps you.
Oh, totally.
Like, the author sets up this scenario that seems like a really basic biology lesson. Yeah. But every detail is actually a carefully placed puzzle piece,
Yeah.
designed to force you, the reader, into a very specific philosophical corner.
Yeah, and I have to warn you up front, if you're listening, the tone of this text is a wild ride.
That's an understatement.
Right, because we are going to encounter surprisingly funny, almost sitcom-esque descriptions of farmyard animals bickering.
Which you do not expect.
No, not at all. And then, mere paragraphs later, we are going to be hit with these massive, sweeping statements about the dawn of creation.
It's a lot of whiplash.
It is. It's brilliant, it is weird, and we are going to break down exactly how the mechanics of this author's logical trap actually work.
I think the best place to start is with the physical reality the author establishes on page 1.
Okay, yeah.
Because before we even touch the philosophy, we really have to look at the biological constraints of the egg. The text grounds us by stating that it takes exactly 21 days of incubation by the hen for the yolk and the egg white inside to fully transform into a living chick.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because those 21 days are the foundation of everything that follows. The author emphasizes that during this entire period, the chick is completely isolated from the outside world.
Absolute zero contact.
Right. And to understand the gravity of this, imagine you are locked in an escape room. But not like a fun weekend activity escape room with your friends.
Right. No clues hidden in books.
Exactly. You are put into a pitch-black sensory deprivation tank inside a locked vault for exactly 21 days.
Which is a truly terrifying scenario, honestly.
Oh, it gets worse. You have no instruction manual, no internet connection, no window to look out of, and absolutely zero external sources of information. Nobody slips a note under the door telling you what to expect.
Just floating there.
Yeah. But on day 21, without any warning, you are suddenly expected to know the exact 10-digit combination to the lock to break out of the room. And if you don't punch in that code perfectly on the first try, you don't survive. That is the exact logical paradox this author is laying out for the unhatched chick.
What's fascinating here is how that analogy highlights the core tension perfectly. The author is deliberately emphasizing this absolute, impenetrable isolation to set up a massive question of input versus output.
Okay, yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, in any logical system, if you want a complex output, like, say, the highly coordinated physical action of a baby bird breaking out of a shell, you expect some sort of complex input or training to prompt it.
Right, you don't just magically know things.
Exactly. Yeah. But if the author establishes that there is strictly zero input from the outside world, how does the chick know the 10-digit code to get out?
Right away, if you are stuck in that escape room and you didn't bring the knowledge in with you, your immediate logical instinct is to look at the people who put you there.
Did someone secretly give you the answers before you were logged in?
Right. So the text poses the obvious question. Did the parents somehow pass on this escape plan to the chick beforehand?
And this is where the author deploys a really fascinating rhetorical strategy. To prove that the chick's knowledge is entirely innate, the author has to systematically eliminate any possibility of learned behavior.
Yeah.
And they do this by turning to comedy, of all things.
Wait, I'm genuinely confused by the author's strategy here. Because we are reading what claims to be a serious essay on the origin of knowledge, right?
Right.
And suddenly we have a rooster throwing a literal tantrum You read this part and it feels like you've tuned into a daytime soap opera.
It really does.
The text explicitly rules out the rooster by describing him as this deadbeat dad who spends all day trying to, quote, seduce hens and cares absolutely nothing for the life or death of the chicks. How does this serve a philosophical argument at all?
I mean, it feels completely out of place at first glance. But look at what it achieves mechanically. By framing the rooster as this ridiculous stereotype, the author disarms you with humor while quietly closing a major logical door.
Oh, and the excuse the rooster gives is completely absurd.
It's so funny.
The text says that when the mother hen complains that the rooster isn't taking care of household chores or, like, educating their children, he gives this scandalous defense, quote, "Who knows if I am the father of this little thing? Last month I saw you fooling around with the neighbor's rooster."
He's playing the paternity card.
He is literally casting doubt on his own paternity just to get out of teaching the kid how to hatch. It's wild.
It is a hilarious diversion,
Yeah.
but the conclusion the text draws from it is actually rock solid within the argument, which is the father passes on zero experience. None.
Ah, okay. I see it.
Yeah, the comedic absurdity makes you accept the premise without citing it. You are laughing at the rooster. And while you're distracted, the author has successfully eliminated the father as a source of education.
Wow. Okay, so the father is out. He is completely unbothered and absent. That leaves the mother hen. Did she teach the chicks the 10-digit code to break out of the escape room?
The author closes this door using a completely different method this time. Pure pragmatism.
Ah.
Yeah, the text argues that if the mother hen actually possessed the conscious awareness to teach the chick this highly specific, really difficult hatching technique, she wouldn't even bother.
Because it would just be inefficient.
Precisely. The logic presented is that if she were intelligent enough to formulate a lesson plan, she would be intelligent enough to realize it is far easier and, way less time-consuming for her to simply pick the shell open from the outside.
Right. Why force a weak, uncoordinated infant to do something she could just do in 2 seconds?
Exactly.
That is such a clever rhetorical trap. By heavily personifying the chickens, giving the rooster these jealous, lazy motivations, and giving the mother this exasperated pragmatism, the author is highlighting how ridiculous it is to apply human concepts of teaching and learned behavior to farmyard animals.
And notice the architecture of what just happened.
Yeah.
The author used humor to eliminate the father and ruthless logic to eliminate the mother. As a reader, you are being boxed in. The escape room is sealed, and you have just been forced to agree that nobody handed the chick a cheat sheet before the door locked.
There's no manual.
Right. The knowledge of how to hatch must come from somewhere else.
So if both parents are entirely eliminated as teachers, we are left staring at the sheer mechanics of the hatching process itself. And this is where the author shifts the tone again, viewing the whole event not just as a quirk of biology, but as a literal miracle.
Yeah, the text begins to pose some deeply profound questions about the chick's inner world and its sudden burst of physical action.
Like, the author asks, who told the chick about the colorful and wonderful world outside? Think about the sensory reality of that egg for a second.
It's nothing but darkness.
Right. The chick has only ever known a dark, fluid interior. It has never seen color, never felt a breeze, never seen another chicken. How does a creature in that environment even conceptualize that there is a destination worth struggling for?
It's a massive leap.
And further, how does the chick know that its tender little beak is actually capable of pecking through a solid wall?
It's a profound lack of experience. The chick has never tested its beak on anything solid. It has never swung its neck to strike an object. Yet, when day 21 arrives, it acts with the absolute certainty of a creature that has both tested its strength and knows exactly what lies on the other side of the wall.
Then there is the physical barrier itself. The text marvels at the paradox of the eggshell. It asks why the shell is precisely thick enough to protect the developing chick from the dangers of the outside world, yet exactly thin enough for a weak baby bird to break through from the inside.
The margins for error there are incredibly slim.
Right.
If the calcium deposits are just a fraction too thick, the chick becomes entombed and basically dies of exhaustion trying to escape. If the shell is a fraction too thin, it shatters prematurely during incubation and the chick dies anyway. The author is framing this as a perfectly calibrated system.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The author frames these physical properties, that perfect, protective, yet fragile thickness, and the chick's sudden, violent action to break it, as a perfectly choreographed dance. But it's a dance where the dancer didn't even have to rehearse a single step. They just wake up on stage knowing the entire routine. And the author's sole answer to all these questions, who taught it, how does it know about the world, how does it know its beak is strong enough, is one single word: instinct.
Which, this raises an important question. What exactly do we mean when we use the word instinct?
Right, it's kind of a loaded word.
It really is. Because in everyday conversation, we use it as a convenient catch-all term. It's just a box we put animal behaviors into when we don't fully understand the minute mechanisms behind them.
Oh, for sure, like a bird flies south. Instinct.
Exactly. A dog turns in circles before lying down.
Yeah.
Instinct. But you, as the listener, need to pay very close attention to how this specific author defines that word, because it is definitely not a placeholder for "we don't know."
Yeah, for this author, instinct is an active, preloaded software program. The text explicitly states that the chick has no active awareness of what it's doing. When the time comes, it just blindly pecks its way out.
Yep.
And this is the major pivot of the entire essay. This is where our deep dive transitions from a quirky biological observation into outright theology.
The author draws a very, very hard line in the sand regarding where this preloaded software came from. The text explicitly states that instinct is not evolutionary. It is purely innate.
That is a massive, sweeping statement. Instinct is not evolutionary, it is innate. The author is entirely rejecting the idea that this hatching behavior developed slowly over millions of years.
Right.
And to prove this, the text poses a fascinating thought experiment that takes us all the way back to the beginning of time.
The thought experiment focuses on generation 1, the very first chicken.
Imagine you're the author trying to prove intelligent design. You need a scenario where learning through trial and error is mathematically impossible. So the text says, imagine the very first chick hatched from the very first egg, laid by the very first chicken on Earth.
Okay.
According to the author's logic, that very first chick already knew there was a world outside to survive in. It already knew its beak was strong enough to break the shell.
The mechanical logic the author is deploying here relies on a concept often associated with irreducible complexity, even though the text doesn't actually use that specific scientific term.
Right, it's more conceptual here.
Yeah. The argument is that survival could not have waited for a gradual evolutionary learning curve. If that very first chick didn't possess the exact, flawless sequence of behaviors required to escape the shell on its very first try, it would have died.
And if it dies in the egg, the species ends right there in generation 1.
Exactly.
There are no second chances, no subsequent generations to inherit slightly better hatching techniques.
Which is exactly the author's point.
Yeah.
The trait must have been perfectly installed from day one, or the animal ceases to exist. The chick cannot slowly evolve the ability to hatch, because failing to hatch is instantly fatal to the evolutionary line.
It's fascinating how the author constructs this architecture. I mean, we aren't looking at this text today through the lens of modern evolutionary biology to debunk it, right?
No. Right.
We're just tracing the internal logic of this specific philosophical argument. The author is building a very specific logical trap for the reader. They establish the absolute isolation of the egg. They use comedy to eliminate the parents as teachers. They frame the physical act of hatching as an impossibly complex task for a newborn. And finally, they argue that the very first chicken couldn't have relied on trial and error.
Right. And by systematically removing all those variables from the board, the author creates a massive logical vacuum. If the knowledge didn't come from the parents, didn't come from the environment, and couldn't have evolved slowly over time.
Where did it come from?
Right. Where did the 10-digit code for the escape room come from?
And the text fills that vacuum with one very specific conclusion. The author states that since the first chick possessed this vital instinct without any genetic precedent, quote, we can only ask the greatest creator.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and bring this back to your escape room analogy for a second, the author is saying that if you are in that sensory deprivation tank and on day 21 you flawlessly punch in a code you have never seen, there are really only two explanations. Either you learned it somehow, which the text just spent half its length disproving, or the architect of the escape room hardwired the code into your brain before you're even born.
Wow.
The author is arguing for the architect.
They are using this tiny everyday occurrence, a chick hatching on a dusty farm, as a microcosm to argue for a universe governed by intelligent design. The beautifully calibrated thickness of the eggshell and the unlearned immediate knowledge of the chick are presented as undeniable evidence of a pre-programmed system. A system instilled perfectly from the very beginning by a creator.
It is a masterclass in rhetorical escalation.
It really is.
And, understanding an argument like this, tracing its steps from A to B to C, is entirely different from agreeing with it. The true value for a critical reader is in seeing how the author constructs their worldview. They take a biological observation, reframe it as a paradox, close every mundane escape route, and leave divine intervention as the literally only remaining exit. It is a highly structured, very deliberate progression.
So what does this all mean? Let's trace the journey we've just been on together. We started by looking at a literal 21-day incubation chamber. We laughed at a sitcom-style deadbeat rooster making excuses about his cheating partner.
Still so funny.
I know, right? Then we marveled at the precise, perfectly balanced thickness of a shell of calcium. And we ended up standing at the absolute dawn of creation, looking at the very first egg being asked to acknowledge the greatest creator.
It's a testament to how much philosophical weight a seemingly simple observation can carry, provided you look at it through a very specific, carefully constructed lens.
And that is exactly why exploring the source material matters for you, the listener. It is a powerful reminder of the value of examining the arguments embedded in the everyday texts we encounter. Even a lighthearted story about a farmyard animal can contain a deeply embedded, highly structured worldview about where our knowledge comes from and how the entire universe is designed. It shows us that profound philosophical arguments aren't just found in heavy, dense academic textbooks.
No, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they are baked right into the quirky stories we tell about chickens and eggs.
It demands a kind of active reading from all of us. When you encounter any text, especially one that seems simple, you should always ask, what is the author trying to eliminate?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right, like what variables are they actively removing from the board to force me toward their specific conclusion? In this essay, the author used humor to eliminate the parents and the threat of instant extinction to eliminate evolution, leaving only one door open.
It really makes you think about how every argument you consume is built. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on the fundamental premise of this fascinating essay.
The text leaves us with that very evocative, slightly haunting image of the chick's inner drive in the dark, doesn't it?
It does. The author argues that the unhatched chick instinctively knows there is a colorful and wonderful world outside waiting for it. It knows this despite the fact that it has never seen a single color, never felt the wind, never experienced anything beyond the dark, fluid walls of its tiny vault.
Yeah.
It just possesses this massive innate drive to break through the barrier. So if we entertain the author's premise for a moment, the idea that instinct is an innate, unlearned pull toward an unseen reality, it begs a really compelling question about us.
A question about the nature of human instinct.
Exactly. What unseen worlds or hidden realities might our own human instincts be unconsciously trying to break us through to? When we feel an inexplicable, innate drive to explore the stars, to connect deeply with strangers, or to seek meaning in art and science, are we just responding to our immediate environment?
Right. Are we?
Or are we, much like the chick in that 21-day escape room, blindly pecking at the walls of our own black box, driven by a deep, preloaded instinct toward a colorful and wonderful world we haven't even seen yet?
It certainly makes you wonder what kind of shell we might currently be living inside.
It absolutely does. Keep pecking at the walls. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.